So I'm going to be looking at Don Juan and poetical accessibility in Don Juan and Lord Byron. All right, so first looking at the life and reputation of Lord Byron, I found this publication published by Edinburgh University of the Edinburgh History of Scottish Literature, Enlightenment, Britain and Empire from 1701 to 1918. This was published in 2006, and there was a section by Alan Rawls titled Lord Byron. And so this was kind of an overall account of Lord Byron's life, so kind of his British reputation and his intersectionality with his Scottish heritage, a look at his infamous reputation from leaving his wife and being exiled from England for sodomy and incest. His sister being pictured there on the far right, her name was Augusta Lee or Augusta Leigh. And also taking a look at the publications, his publication and his popularity. So his infamous reputation, paradoxically enough, did not bastardize him, but actually gained him some new followers for the content of those publications. When Don Juan, Canto 1 and Canto 2 came out, they did not do very well at all with his old readership. But once he changed publishers in 1822 and started making them in cheaper formats, it became really, really big in the lower middle class. And so, looking at Byron's influence, here's a quote from Raw saying, Byron's poetry also powerfully depicts some absolute limits to freedom. His speakers, narrators, and characters live under the sway of oppressive forces they cannot shake off as well as they can. Guilt, memory, perspective gender roles, and predestination, as well as political tyranny, ideology, and conventional morality. And so these topics are really important when looking at who his works really influenced the lower middle class. And Byron actually famously helped inspire the Greek and Spanish uprising. So his poetry is definitely inspiring change of some kind and action. And so then I thought a good way to look at this kind of accessibility and why it was so engaging with the lower middle class, was to looking at the Byronic hero. And so this study, titled Creating Fiction Characters, the Role of Experience, Personality, and Social Processes, was published in the Psychology of Aesthetics, Creativity, and the Arts in 2017 by Marta M. Masledge et al. So this study was trying to figure out what exactly creates a compelling character through kind of writer habits. Are they a writer? Are they a non-writer? How often do they write? What do they write? And also reader habits. So are they a reader, a non-reader? If they do read, how often do they read? Do they read poetry? Do they read fiction? Do they read nonfiction? Those kind of elements. And so what I wanted to focus on was kind of the findings that they said about what made characters most engaging. And so this quote on the right says, to be engaging, a character must capture our interest and hold our attention in a story. This can happen when we take our character's perspective and imagine ourselves to be her or him in a process known as identification. Or in other words, I like to use that word identification as kind of like the relatability of a character, since you're identifying with that character. So that's what the Byronic hero is. And so that second quote's going to be on the next slide. And so here's that second quote. Rather than being a reflection of character quality, likability might have reflected how agreeable the character seemed, or how similar the character appeared to the reader. Interpersonal attractions is influenced by similarity and what we tend to like people who we think are similar to ourselves. And that picture is some kind of modern day depictions of what a Byronic hero is. So we have like Jack Sparrow, Severus Snape, Iron Man, just people like that. And so taking that quote in the sense of Byronic hero, the Byronic hero has this distaste for social norms, are typically moody, mysterious, a loner, different from society, from everybody else. And so in the context of Don Juan's introduction is adultery, which is definitely not a traditional hero-like quality. And the Byronic hero and Don Juan himself is not necessarily a quality character in the sense of morality, hence the adultery part of it. And also, he's very self-serving. And so this is important too, because what this actually shows is that this is a human with flaws. It's not an idealization that the traditional hero usually pushes. And it's kind of like this real outlook on what a human being put in these situations would do. And so here's this little stanza. The greatest danger here was from a shark that carried off his neighbor by the thigh. As for the other two, they could not swim, so nobody arrived on shore with him. This is in Canto 2 after Don Juan and some crewmates are able to find a shore and have to swim to it. But interestingly enough, Don Juan is the only one who makes it across. And the important part here is that a traditional hero would have tried to everything to save them. But that shark took his neighbor by the thigh, and the other two were just left on the boat. And so Don Juan, he doesn't call to action. He doesn't try to help them. Nowhere is there an illusion that he tried to help them or that he was thinking about it. He was focused solely on himself. So definitely not like a quality of a moral character. And then so at the last article I'm going to focus on is this article titled Foregrounding the Sublime by David Ismail. And so he's talking about Percy Shelley and Percy Shelley's use of foregrounding, which is putting objects of intentional focus in the foreground, and then defamiliarization, which is subverting the reader's expectations, which all lead to the poetical sublime, or the higher thought, the next level of thinking. And I wanted to put this into context of Lord Byron, and Lord Byron does this interestingly enough. And so something Neil writes is that defamiliarization serves to subvert expectations by causing the reader to being overwhelmed. And so I want to look at this in two different ways. Byron himself is a defamiliarization of the romantic genre, just because he's not very heavily focused on the natural world. And so he's not using the natural world to understand humanity or vice versa, as other romantic poets tend to do, like Wordsworth or Keats or anything like that. But he's using human behaviors to understand and depict humanity. And so what Mill also says that perspective is shifted to the point of vertigo. Here he's actually talking about Percy Shelley's poetry trying to scale magnitude of his thought, but Byron does the same thing of shifting point of view through the tones between Canto 1 and Canto 2. So if we look at Canto 1, the relative ending says, must with permission take you by the hand, and so your humble servant, and goodbye. And so what this creates is actually this consensual, friendly, warm relationship that is completely just flipped on its head in the second canto. The relative beginning marked, and the ominous journey marked by, of all our pumps, a wreck compete she rolled, at mercy at the waves, whose mercies are like human beings during civil war. And so especially that last line, taking that idea of civil war, it's this kind of ominous marking of loss. And what follows is death, cannibalism, blood, and human violence. And the human violence kind of calling back to that civil war. And so this is a complete kind of 180 in tone that really kind of grabs your attention and forces you to focus on what's happening in the story. And then so for my conclusion, Weil mentions, for Kant, the sublime signified the affirmation of reason amidst the defeat of the imagination, since our senses fail to give an adequate representation of the sublime. And I was really kind of stuck upon that phrase, affirmation of reason amidst the defeat of the imagination. And so first, Don Juan and Byron's poetry, through its use of satire and defamiliarization of the romantic genre, kind of scaffolds the stairway that allows for romantic poetry to be accessible to the common people. It's more entertaining, it grabs their attention, and they just want to learn more. And so, but also most importantly for Lord Byron and for what is the Byronic hero and Byronic poetry, and like what it symbolizes is the ability to empathize and find likeness in humanity of people through an unconventional, relatable, moody hero, and kind of find it within themselves to take action, just as the Spanish and Greeks were encouraged to do through his poetry. So definitely doing something, even if it's not the societally moral, polite society expected kind of thing to do. And then here's my works cited. Thank you.